Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're actually listening to this. So we're into episode 4 of the Business Belters. I hope everybody out there is listening to it. I hope you've all subscribed and you've hit that like button and you're listening to them one by one. So today we're going to talk about a good one, overcoming business fears.
Brilliant episode. So another one to fall on for mistakes. I think fears is another topic that a lot of podcasts don't focus on, they don't talk about.
Exactly. And I speak to so many business owners. We obviously help business owners with marketing, and there's so many fears. There's a lot of business owners out there with a lot of fear, even when you're networking with people. So, I would like for us to share some tips, some of our fears and what we've done as well, and hopefully help the listeners or the watchers improve as well and get something from it. So on that, what has been your kind of biggest fears in business?
So biggest fears for me, I would say that most of the fears probably surround money management, in the sense of, do you have enough to grow? Do you have enough to pay your wages? Do you have enough to kind of like survive as a company? But specifically around about recruitment, I think a lot of business owners, including myself, they kind of hold off on hiring. I've actually hired quite quickly with all my businesses. When I started my first business, I started with 4 employees. That's quite an unusual move. I started with a studio. Again, quite unusual. So not only did I jump out, but I had another 2 fears that I crossed. But I think the important difference is I knew those were fears. So speaking to people, they go, one of the biggest barriers to overcome is starting on your own. Right, cool. What else is another barrier? I ask selfishly. And the guy says, well, hiring people. I'm like, right, cool. So I'll hire people as well. What else? And it says getting a premises. So I'm like, if I do the 3 of them, then I've ripped off 3 of the band-aids, and hopefully that'll just kind of put my back in a wall and say, right, deal with it. And you have to kind of forge ahead. So it's almost like using the fear to leverage. But I also see that a lot of people are scared to hire employees because you're thinking, when's the right time? And I've learnt this quite recently. So I've exited the business, I've set up again, so I'm getting the joy of kind of doing this again, right? So I told my wife, Ali, I won't hire anyone for 6 months. And she's laughing because she knows this is complete nonsense.
She knows you too well.
She knows me too well. So we got to week 3 and I hired a full-time developer because I was thinking, well, the clients need that. That's part of the service. We need to have good quality services. So then, we go by, there's another, like say, couple of months, and I've hired a second person. So our team is already up to 3. We're a brand new company. But to me, it's like you have to overcome those fears. Now, every time I make that kind of hard, solid decision and make that offer, I then think, oh my God, what's that going to do to my cash flow? And then I would say a little bit of panic comes into you, and you go, do we have enough retainers for that? Or what's the projects? And you run through them in your mind and you go, but I could probably get that over on this one, and maybe I could expedite this. But I think the more you do that, especially if you don't have the retainers, it becomes quite scary. So in the past, I've had employees, like say 24 employees on the books, and you're thinking your running cost is something like 87k per month just in running cost. And you're like, that's quite a considerable amount of money, and that's at its peak kind of thing. But if you need to generate that amount of money, try and think about that for the context. So you're going from an employee to a business, and then all of a sudden you've got that kind of money to pay for. So it's like you might actually have to generate more than your entire annual salary of your previous job in like a month to just pay wages, which seems ridiculous to say it that way, but that's definitely one of the big fears for me. What's one of your biggest fears?
It's probably the exact same. So I didn't recruit early enough because of that fear, because I've done it the exact same way as you. So I've basically I'm going to make enough money for myself. Well, it's not the exact same because I think you hired everybody. So I hired myself. So I'm like that, right, I'm paying myself this wage, and then I've obviously got the running costs on that as well. So nice lifestyle business, you can sit there nicely, make an exact amount of money you want to make, have the right amount of clients. There was a bit of but by not recruiting early enough, I started to drop the ball probably with some clients, because I'm still bringing clients on, still trying to sell, and then you're just overwhelmed with the amount of work. You've not got the amount of time. There's just not enough time in the day. So I took probably too long in hiring someone is my big kind of error in that, and it's probably again fear, because I was then thinking I'm paying myself, I'm now going to have to pay this person, but this person's then got this, but they're bringing in the gas and the electricity, and they also need a new computer, and they need a new piece of software
and hidden
here.
costs.
So there's all these running costs. So then I'm like, I now need to make sure that I do an even better job, because it's not just me feeding myself, it's me feeding other people. So that was a big fear in recruitment, and not hiring people enough as well. And it essentially all comes down to, money. Linking into that is there's always been a fear. As I touched on before, I basically got myself burnt because personally I didn't manage my money correctly. So it's always going to be there. So that fear of money and making sure I'm raising finances, making sure that I'm always above the parapet, always, making the right amount of money, paying people, being able to pay people, pay your bills and all that sort of stuff as well, and running my business in profit. So I'm quite kind of pleased to say that I've always run my business. The least amount of profit that I've got is 32%. And
32 is the lowest.
The lowest.
Wow.
So I've
serious
always
kudos for
sort of done really well on that. So that
you
so
did better than me.
The fear of not managing that money. I don't think it's going to be this year, because I've definitely expanded a little bit more with staff.
I think most people in COVID would be happy just to kind of have like a wee 10-15% or something.
Yeah. And it's just been, I mean, on that as well, it's just been very streamlined with certain things, and trying just to get more out of staff and train staff in the right sort of way. So if you can get a staff member on doing this, then you give them skills on other things as well, so you can get more out of that staff member rather than them being just a little bit more specialist in one area. So yeah, I think the recruitment fear, and probably the fear of just hiring the right person. So for me, I was always trying to hire another me. Yeah, and
which is pretty much impossible when you think about
impossible. And if you did hire another you, they wouldn't be
a bad fit.
It would be a bad fit. They wouldn't be there.
See, if you think about it, like if you hire another you, they're probably going to have that entrepreneurial part in them as well, and then it's like it puts you into a kind of conflict, because then they'll want to kind of go out on their own and do their own thing.
And like that's like how we met was through a board and stuff like that. And one of the things that you do at the very start is that disc profile.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of the things again. It's kind of ingrained into me now is like I'm in a certain part on that disc profile. I need to hire people that are not on that, so if I'm in a C, they're in an I, and I need to hire somebody in
I try and get
D,
a contrast.
So you get a contrast so that you then get that perfect business. If I hire somebody like me, they're just going to be exactly like me. So it's like an ideas guy go out and they're like, yeah, we can do this and we can sell this, but you've not got the guy that's the analytical guy and then go like back and like make sure that we
try and find a balance
and tick these boxes. So you have to find that balance.
It's probably worthwhile saying that as well. So like disc profile is a personality profiling tool, so you might have heard of like Myers-Briggs or Talent Dynamics. It's just another kind of tool like that you use. So the D, I, S and C, just they have different attributes about it, so just filling it in for the listener in the sense of they might be curious about disc as well.
It's great because I think there's another one that I'd used before, and it's Insights or something like that as well. It's like I think it's a company in Dundee, and you get a colour.
Okay.
So you're like a green and I'm a red, and like greens and reds don't get on with each other, so they're like, and it basically says
that can't be us then.
We must be greens or whatever, the
two greens, two peas in a pod.
The link with each other. So yeah, business fears for me is people and money. I think another big fear is going out to get business. Has that been one of your fears, going out and get business, getting new clients? Has it ever been a
See, it's an interesting thing for me. So I would say yes and no, which I know is not really allowed as an answer, but so I have immense faith in my commercial ability to kind of drum in the sales and win them, but I also have like a kind of paralysing fear and the worry of not doing that. So each time I've expanded my team, and I do grow aggressively, I grew a pretty sizable agency in a relatively short amount of time. I don't know if we were the fastest growing at that point, but we certainly got up to a big number very, very quickly and stably as well. But when I looked at it, being commercial can also be a fault in the sense of, right, I can grow the business, I can bring that in, but you have to kind of remember to keep adding in the production layers. So as I expand and expand and expand and expand, you need to make sure your team are coming there with you and they're up to scratch.
Yeah.
So production and commercial being in constant conflict has been one of the kind of biggest things that I've struggled with over the years. Now my way around that is to basically have what I would call a wedge or some kind of buffer. So I know you were speaking about in a previous episode and you mentioned you didn't start with money in to there. I kind of went a slightly different path, and it's probably just the cautious side of me in the sense of, right, I'm about to sort of like blunderbuss forward into this, but I want to kind of game the sort of race to make sure I win. So in business, you're allowed to kind of like stack the chips in your favour, if you will. So you're allowed to cheat. You know, you're allowed to actually have like, right, I'm going to win the race, but I'm going to tie his legs together and I'll have a personal trainer. And, you know, there's no such thing like the Avada Commission stopping you, right? So in business, you can take loans, you can take on debt, you can take on other things to give you a head start. So I looked at it. I didn't really know much about investors at the time. So I looked at it and thought, right, my credit rating is perfect. I have a 999 credit rating. Fantastic. Sainsbury's Bank. I've just paid off all my debts. I'd been debt-free for years. Long time debt-free. And I turned around to Sainsbury's Bank and I said, what would you guys give me as a loan? Like the maximum you would give me? And they went, I think we could give you like 42 grand. And I was like, let's do that then. Didn't even ask the repayment, just said, let's do that then. And then I gave the entirety of that money to my business as a director's loan. So thankfully, and for anyone that's doing it as a business, if you're an employee jumping out, having it as a director's loan means that you can pull it back into your own bank tax-free. So it's one of the most efficient ways of giving business money and capital it needs, but then you can draw off it either as a salary or pay back the debt. So I pulled it back into my account and then paid the loan. And that's the way I kind of went about doing that. But that gave me a bit of a runway, and that's the only reason I could afford to have 4 employees and a studio. But as we said before, you can't save your way to a successful business, so that buffer becomes quite scary, and it's another way of visualising cash flow. And I've definitely learned the lesson now, because now when I've gave this business directors loans as well, I sit that money in a different space, so sit it away. So the money that sits over there has got nothing to do with what I make. So every month I pretend I'm broke, I'm skint, I need to win the sales, and that fires me up. But the reality is there is a bit of money sitting there, and I just need to kind of keep the intention down and not spending it.
Yeah, I love that you say that about how you kind of started off, because that's probably another business fear, is looking at other people. So I was looking at like competitors and different agencies, and I remember seeing you and you kind of started up, and it was like Loudon Design, and it was like you had a studio and you had people, and I'm like, what is he doing, man? How's he grown that fast? He's just started up. I was like, how can he get a studio? I was like, I can't even get a shed. But it was, you know, and then it's good to see the kind of other side of the story of it. And I think that's a fear. Don't just insinuate that, you know, people are doing well. There's other kind of stories.
Well, so you're only seeing the success, and that me as a person, it's not my intention to deceive or to say to people like, look, I'm doing this all out of my own sort of like organic thing. I'll be the first to admit that, look, I've took finance, I've took that kind of way to grow the business, to do that kind of stuff. However, I do think that it's very easy for people to fall into the trap of thinking, well, I'm not sure how they've done that, and I've seen. There's a few agencies, and I'll not name them. I'll name them in other podcasts in a positive light, but I think there is a perception there where you look at agencies and you think, wow, they've had it really difficult. And you're like, well, they really haven't had it really difficult, because the reality of the story is not what's being presented. I can present a scenario that goes, oh, I've got 5 kids and, you know, don't have any money and just starting this business out on my own, you know, Mark, and we'll see what it is. It's lies though, because obviously I have a high amount of commercial experience, business experience. I've been through it and I've fought in the trenches. I could start a business tomorrow and have it profitable for day one, because I know what to do. So it's almost like you learn the moves. You know, I would almost imagine it like a chess game.
Exactly.
Right, so if I play you as an amateur, you probably absolutely murk me inside the first game. But then if I come back to you and I've played, and now I know maybe a few openings, so I know like, right, we'll play the Queen's Gambit, or we'll play the Sicilian. I'm at a distinct advantage to you, because I know that by doing this and being patient, I'll get a better result.
Yeah.
So I would measure it in the sense that when I look at your business and observe what you've said to me, you're much more patient than me. So you were willing to wait off to bring the employees in, whereas I was impatient.
Yeah.
So I wanted to build a 50-man agency, and I thought, I ain't going to get a 50-man agency by me being a freelancer for 6 years. So I'm like, how do we get to 12 people as fast as possible?
Yeah, it's not patience and impatience, it's different planning strategy with it. As I said in previous ones, there's probably an imposter syndrome and a fear there, and that's maybe that I was just like, I'll just take small steps as we go along. But it's a good thing, as I said, kind of like in that point, is it's not just you. That I'd see other agencies and other companies grow really quickly, but you don't know their backstory. Like I know that other agency owners have left an agency, because we had this before when I worked in client side. They left an agency but basically took
some clients with them,
and took the clients with them, and that's essentially,
and that's actually the most common. So I've learnt that myself. So agency owners don't often talk to each other. Like our relationship's actually quite odd in that way. Yeah. But I think there's like we both get that there's not like a kind of natural combative kind of nature to it. But over the years I've squirreled this out of agencies, and when I look at their pattern, I always kind of go back and go, oh, so how did you guys get started? And I always ask them and I listen. And the consistent thing is exactly that. Oh, we worked with Scottish Power and they came with us. Yeah. So it's like most of it is a case of maybe a client becomes disenfranchised with the company, and then they sort of whisper in the ear and go, you ever thought of doing this on your own, Mark? And you're like, what about the work? And it's like, oh, well, if you could set it up, we would come with you. And it's that, to me, is almost like a kind of, it's not a lesser thing, but that's a lot less stressful, I think. To take a sizable retainer and use that as your kind of lifeblood is a lot easier than sort of going, right, tomorrow you're unemployed. Or self-employed, as we call it, to make it sound a bit better. But you're self-employed, and it's like, go, it's on you. Generate 20 grand a month. Go. And it's like, what did I do?
And it was, I mean, that for me it was like, from starting from scratch, it was hard to kind of go, right, I now need to start making money. But it was a great learning experience. It was an absolute great learning experience. But, doing your research, that's what it was like. Your fear was like, why is everybody doing better than me? And they weren't necessarily doing better than you. And I think that's the thing as well. It's like, again, people think about time and they think about growing really, really quickly and being a fast kind of growing company. Again, that's not, I wouldn't probably say, people take that as a kind of fear as well and say I'm not growing fast enough. But actually growing, slow and steady, getting it right is just as... It's
better. I would actually argue it's better. Because I think it's the ego that kind of wants the premises, wants the big fancy office.
Yeah, make sure you
none of that's helping you.
Get the foundations right, get everything solid. As I said, like in business mistakes, I hired the wrong people, doing the things wrong with the wrong contracts. Imagine I did that at scale.
Aye.
And then lots of different people. It failed really, really quickly. Business probably would have went downhill. But I've learned kind of small mistakes and built it up that way as well. I think going into another fear, and you just touched on it there, was like premises. I think that was another thing. One as well. A big one, like getting premises.
The dreaded lease. How many months lease will you think?
Exactly. And I when to do that. I probably did it, maybe year 2, year 3, and then I've moved in to here. Where I was
so walk me through that though. So so you're in your business, you're working from where? Home, right? And then you get to 2 years in. How many staff? Any at that point?
No staff.
No staff. So you decide to get a premise.
Decided to get a premise because reputation, probably, and kind of brand reputation, because I was going out and I was meeting people and it was like, all right, can I meet you? I'll meet you in your office. I'm out and about just now, so I'll meet you in a hotel. So I'm meeting people in different hotels all over the place to do business meetings. And it just was like, actually, I'd love it if I could say, come here, come to my business, show you around, that sort of thing.
Do you know that's an interesting paradigm there though? So you basically had to take an office through a client expectation. And I think a lot of things we do in business, we spoke about VAT registry, that's another one. And there's lots of things where this might not actually be advantageous to the company at that stage, but you'll do it anyway because it's a client expectation almost.
But it was probably links to money, links to having a premise, and then you're kind of locked into something. But it was such a great thing. So is anybody working from home? They know exactly what it's like. You start going, oh, I'll maybe put like washing on, or maybe make another cup of coffee, or was that somebody at the door? I better go and check if it was somebody at the door. So you're inefficient to a certain point. You still get a lot of work done, but you're probably inefficient to a certain point because there's a home luxuries there. But when I came in, it was like in an 8-hour day at home, I was doing the same amount of work in 4 hours in the office, because it was just like,
more efficient,
more efficient, head down, like work away. And it helped me expand, because you brought people in and said, like, come on to the office, here's a boardroom. You know, we're then doing like strategy meetings in the boardroom and stuff like that. Probably saves money, because I was probably then, you know, previously booking a hotel room out or a conference room out to try and do that. Still, you know, it was money. And if you're doing that a lot of the time, you're probably about the same spend, essentially.
I actually took an office 2 weeks ago. So that's like, it's for a hybrid anchor. So basically, we've been working from home, as probably everybody has with the lockdown. But it's exactly the point you just raised. It was efficiency. And I was thinking, I'm not being efficient here. I'm not as efficient, because I'll have my lunch and I'll talk to the kids, or, you know, the kids will come in and show me their Kindles, and I get easily distracted, and it's kind of like, you know, like squirrel, like, oh, what's that? You know, just looking over. Whereas being in the office has been amazing. So I've had like, right, I can go in at 7 a.m. and I can work through to 6. I can come back to the house, get my lunch, and then go back down again. But just having that place where I can have my whiteboards and my work and my setup exactly as it needs to be, and I can get everything in a row and get myself in a far better routine. And I'm like, I can definitely see it. The efficiency is like almost quadruple to what it was when I was working for the house. So the work was getting done. But it's just like there's so many distractions, and you're not quite comfortable, and it's, you know, you're maybe in the corner of a room or in a hallway, or it's not quite the way you would want it.
I think it's a good point, because we talk about it as fears, not having premises and things like that, but actually, I mean, the topic is about overcoming business fears, and essentially by just getting out and actually doing the thing that's probably in your head is the actual way you can overcome it.
To move forward.
You know, because essentially me getting the premises has helped me grow the business. I've grown in this place. I took it as a little hot desk. I moved into like an office of my own. Then I had a studio in my own, and then I've moved office just quite recently, like right with a big front window and stuff.
Which is cracking, by the way.
Which is good. It's good. Although you get back to the distractions again, because there's people passing by.
Oh, there's cars.
People watching.
They've got coffee. I want one of them.
It's like watching the staff members look out the window. You're like, this was a bad idea.
just board the windows up. I remember saying that to my wife. We had an office in our house. So before we had like 9 million Waynes, we had like an office in the house, right?
The Waynes just keep on going up.
It just ratchets us up. Every episode there's a new one.
If you're listening from America, Waynes means children.
It's a fair point. They can't understand me anyway. But I was kind of saying that with the window, like the window's completely wasted. We should just board that up, because that could be shelves for books or whatever. And Ali's like, you need to have a window. It's like, I really don't. You know, it's like exactly that. It's just a distraction.
No, it's been such a good thing, and essentially I think it was a fear at the time. So I mean, kind of tailing off at the end, was there any sort of final fears that you've had, or?
So we had recruitment, we had money, finding business as well as, you know, I know we kind of touched on it slightly, but it probably deserves like a little bit of its own. I think there's a fear around where do you find the clients. You know, it's kind of like, okay, I know what I sell is in demand. I know that we're good at what we do. I know I've got a lot of experience in these areas, but it's finding the kind of clients. So when you kind of enter the market, or even if you change your business or buy another business, you always have to think about where you're going to get your work from. So ultimately, we've got retainers, or like you're very well established as well. So when you're there, it's kind of easier in a way, because you're leveraging off of that experience. But I suppose when I started, my fear was I didn't have a portfolio, because I was actually denied through contract to use the stuff that I'd built. And it's kind of like imagine you weren't allowed to use your CV. So I applied to join your company, but I'm not allowed to show you a CV. I'm not allowed to talk about any of the projects I worked on. So for all you know, I've worked for Adidas, Nike, you know, these high-end companies, but I'm not allowed to tell you that. And I think when you start your business, of course the agency that you've left, they're not going to want you to have your portfolio full of, oh, he worked for Simon Howe, he worked for this, he worked for that. They're not going to want you to have that. But that's something I hadn't really factored when I set up my business, whereas I'm not going to have the leverage, the case studies. And even right now, in Hybrid Anchor, although we've actually kind of been profitable for those kind of months, I'm actually still not able to leverage my case studies because it's going to take time to build the website, build the case studies, write all the content. And I'm so focused on client work to make sure that we have good service. So I'm putting the client first and myself second. But that's another fear, because I'm thinking, right, well, where do you get the business from? You know, those early days are so important. That first 3 to 6 months, I think, is like paramount to get right.
I totally concur with you, and I think going out and getting new clients, I think there's a fear of putting yourself out there. There's a fear of putting yourself, and I see it a lot with business owners and networking with people. They have this wee bit of apprehension. If you ever go to a networking meeting and they're quite scared to kind of come up and talk to you and stuff like that, just put yourself out there. Don't be scared of who you are as well. So and don't be scared about what you're selling and things like that. You can see it when people pick up the phone and they're actually scared to tell them about their business because they're not wanting to put themselves out there. I think that's always been the thing for me. Is that was probably, again, imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Am I going to do this? And once you start actually selling your business, once you actually start selling your idea, there was a reason why it started off. There's a reason why it's very successful, is because it's good and people want to hear it. So don't let that be a fear. Don't let them, not believing in yourself that you can't actually go out and get new clients and new business and things like that as well.
It's a brilliant place to end as well. So just before we kind of wrap up, Mark, what's your business belters for today?
My business belters is essentially about overcoming business fears. So I am very much just get yourself out there and just actually do it. So we talked about recruitment and not hiring early enough. I let fear kind of take control. Don't let it take control. Yes, fear's good to a certain extent. There's obviously humans were built with fear for a reason, but most of the time the fear is a fallacy, really. So don't let it kind of take control of your life. Go out there and do the things that you want to do. So if it's in your head, just do it. Take the old Nike approach and do it. What about you? What's your business?
So I think it's listening to what the kind of like blockers, the fears have been today, is really important. So if you understand what fears are and what things hold people back, it allows you to objectively plan around them. So I kind of mentioned that the whole reason why I knew that those fears were there and how to overcome them was because other business people had told me, this is a fear, this is a fear, this is a fear, and I thought, I just kind of want to get them out of my system. Even if it's not perfect, I'd rather just rip the band-aid off and I'm dealing with it. So now I've got staff, I've got PYE to worry about, premises and finding clients. And I just put myself under immense pressure, but that's classic me, in the sense of like just put out the weight of the world on your shoulders and then just swim your way to the shore. But you know what it does? It makes you stronger, because I think definitely I've ended up in a stronger position because I've been more comfortable taking the risks. Not everybody that plays a poker game's happy to put like a couple of grand in on a bet. Other people are more conservative and it's like, let's reserve and he might have better cards, I'll fold. And sometimes you do need to just ante up. I'd say that I've not met a business owner that's like filled with anxiety, but I think if you've got so much anxiety you don't remain objective, business maybe isn't right for you. You have to be comfortable with being really uncomfortable to make a success of it.
Excellent. Okay. So that's just a switch off now for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Today we talked about overcoming business fears. Again, this is completely free, so what we're looking to do is for you to share and tell people about it. It would also be great if you would engage. So we're sharing this through LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. So if you're on these platforms, get into the comments, let us know how you felt about it. If there's any of your own business belters, we're always quite willing to hear about them. And also feel free to email us directly at info@businessbelters.com if you have any ideas or topics, or if you want to even want to come in and we can even interview you if you're interested in being part of Business Belters. So with that, it's a goodbye from me.
It's goodbye for you. See you next week, guys.